What's up, everybody? Welcome back to Salty Critics. Today I have three, not one, not two, but three movies I will be discussing with you today. It has been a busy weekend for me. I've gone to the movies twice with two of these movies, and there was one that I got to just stay home and watch. So, let's just get right into it. Today I will be talking about Kung Fu Panda 4, which is the fourth installment of the Kung Fu Panda DreamWorks quadrilogy now because there's a fourth one. I'm let's just get off the bat with this one. I did not have high hopes going into this movie. I remember watching the trailer for it, and I was very skeptical. Is a safe word to put it. I was very skeptical because I love the first. I love the first two Kung Fu Panda movies. I think those are both very brilliant, funny, engaging films. The third one is not as much, but I won't count it out for being bad. I think it's just fine. The fourth one, though, it is the most cash grabby of cash grab films, and it's basically what Shrek 4 did. They were on a roll. The first two are great. The third one's fine, but the fourth one just kind of, depending on who you are, hits and misses. Um, but I did not really enjoy this one. I didn't. I The most enjoyment I got out of this movie was trying to enjoy the movie and listening to everybody else enjoy the movie. Like kids were laughing and having a great time, and you know what? That's fine. This is a kids movie. This was made. It feels like it was made just to be a kids movie, and that's fine. Heck, there was even like a couple of adults having a great time with their kids there, so that's cool. I saw this with my sister, and we were just sitting there like, mm, dang it, why? What's happening? What are we watching right now? And she was more enthralled with the fact that Viola Davis was the villain, who she did a great job voice actor as like the voice of a villain. The problem with that though was there was not much villain to go around to like really round it out, where she was intimidating but like relatable too. Like the Kung Fu Panda movies have made the villains very relatable, and they made them very like connective with with Poe, the main character. Like they have some kind of connection, either it being having the same goal or having these ideas about how to move along in life, and always kind of being hung up with the past, or just trying to just find inner peace. That's a big one that they like to do. But no, it didn't do anything emotionally worthwhile. There was a point to it, but it also didn't feel like there needed to be a point to it, and that's what makes it worse. Is when even in the movie, it feels like there's no point to the movie's existence, because even in the movie, there's no real point to what's going on and why everything is happening, and it's just so lackluster. And one big thing that took me out of the movie was the fact that it kept reusing jokes from the older movies, and not even going that far. It goes as far as using jokes from other movies, referencing movies that made funnier jokes in better ways. Um, and the best thing about it to me, the best thing that I found out about this movie is I'm not going to do too many spoilers for these movies, by the way. I'm going to try to keep it spoiler free. But the main villain's motivations and the actions that this villain goes through to achieve their goal, it reminded me of Space Jam. And I was sitting there in the theater with my sister, and I was like watching the villain do their thing, and I was like, why does this feel familiar? And I almost shouted it out in the theater, but I caught myself, and I was like, this is Space Jam. This is the little alien plot in Space Jam. It's crazy. Like y'all really took the plot of Space Jam and put it in this movie. I'm just, so much was going on with this. There's a lot of things that I didn't really care for about. The comedy was not on point for me. The characters weren't engaging. Aquafina was in it. I don't really hate her, but I'm not going to be a defender of her either. She's in it. Was she funny? I don't know. Her character has the most pointless arc ever. Yeah, there's not too much to say about that. But it did do one thing that I thought was really cool. It made if you've watched the Kung Fu Panda movies, there's a revelation that Poe's actual dad is still alive. If you haven't watched it, spoiler, sorry. You should watch it before you go see the fourth one. But so he doesn't go away in the fourth movie, and that's good. But it also makes it really interesting dynamics. That something that's just normal is that he has two dads. Now we're in an age where people kind of get kind of, you know, when they hear something like that, but it's so casual and so like normal in the movie that he has two dads, even when they're just saying it to random strangers. No one reacts any kind of way. It's just normal. It's like a normal thing. And that's something I think that they did. Like, I don't know if that was intentional. And if it was intentional, they did a really good job of making it just feel like having two dads is a normal thing. That is something that should be normalized anyway. We are so like that casualness was such a kind of it was a relief, I guess, because I didn't know if there was like I actually was expecting someone to make a comment about the two dad thing because they bring that up quite a lot, but it's just so normal. No one questions it. No one bothers with like trying to question it. It's just normal, and I like that. I did so. There's a plus for that. The action's okay. It's fine. Nothing really special. Nothing that really like stands out really like some of the other fights in the other movies. They try to make something special, but then they kind of backed out of it about 30 seconds into the big thing, and it was like it's kind of it's rushed. It's kind of it's convoluted, and it's a whole thing. And you know what? I won't say don't go see it, but it wasn't the movie that I would have liked. I would have liked to have been surprised that this was actually a bit more heartfelt and a bit more thought out and actually went somewhere, but it did. So it is what it is. We move on. So now moving on to the next movie, the one that actually had more entertainment. The one I found more entertaining, Imaginary. Imaginary also came out this weekend. It is a movie about an imaginary friend that goes very very wrong. Um, so essentially, it's the about a child with an imaginary friend, and this imaginary friend is making her do things that are not good. First, it starts out fine, but then it gets kind of sketchy, and it's because it, this because the teddy bear is a entity that is essentially what imaginary friends are. It's not only you, only the child can see it, or the person that dreamt up that not even dreamt up. It's I can't describe this movie. It's so hard to describe because it's. I think that's probably why a lot of people didn't like it, which was funny to me. I thought this was more entertaining. I was way more engaged with this story than I was with Kung Fu Panda 4, and I literally saw this movie the day after I saw Kung Fu Panda, and I was more into this story than I was with Kung Fu Panda. I had more. I will say I did, and I did want to actually go see this movie more than I wanted to see Kung Fu Panda 4, and I actually enjoyed it a bit more. The big thing with these movies, these types of movies that have their own lore to it, because the lore is that the imaginary friends take on this object. Normally, they kind of normalize it as a teddy bear, but only the child can see it. But in this case, not just the child, the stepmom, she's the stepmom, and they're back in her old house. She can also see it, but no one else can see it. And I love that trip. It was a really cool trip. That's kind of I guess that's kind of a spoiler. That is kind of a it's a trip of a movie. I think it's a really good movie. I wouldn't say it's really good. I'd say it's very engaging. I thought it was more interesting. The lore behind it was always. I think with horror movies like this, where they have to create their own lore, I think they did a decent job of kind of making it make sense enough for this movie. If they were to try to expand on it, it would be really difficult, but also not too far fetched. Um, but there's a lot of people that are talking bad about this movie. I don't know why, because I've only seen a few reviews, a handful of reviews saying that they didn't like it, and then Rotten Tomato score is like 33% or something like that, which is pretty low. And I'm like, that I don't see why people don't like it. Then again, I'm not the biggest horror movie guy. I don't really gravitate toward a lot of horror films, so maybe I'm missing something in the horror aspect. I mean, it wasn't really horrific. It wasn't really scary. It wasn't even that funny. It was just kind of like I just like the different story that it was telling on something that we're probably gonna get different later in the year if you've seen the movie. You've seen the trailer for If with Ryan Reynolds, which is supposed to be more heartfelt and love, and it's supposed to be more cute, meant for kids. This is not your kid's imaginary friend movie. This is your adult coming back to oh yeah, imaginary friends. I used to have one of those, and this one is actually trying to kidnap me. That's and my stepdaughter and the stepdaughter. That's not okay. And I think this one was going to be harder to talk about just because I didn't have a set like thing in mind. I didn't know how to describe this movie without spoiling it because it's kind of hard to do that. But I don't know. I liked it better than Kung Fu Panda 4. I found it way more engaging. That's if I keep saying that. Also, it's just not a lot to talk about with this one. Um, so on to our last movie. So Netflix released a movie with Millie Bobby Brown, which a lot of people are kind of getting kind of tired of, but I don't care. It's a movie. It's called Damsel. So when I first saw the trailer for Damsel, I was very intrigued because it was supposed to be like a retelling of the Princess and the Dragon type story where a knight has to go save the princess from a dragon. Instead, this is not that story, which they make very apparent at the beginning. It's kind of forced at the beginning, but they try to tell you that off the bat, and that's fine. But it doesn't really sit too well in that this is not the story that you're used to hearing. It doesn't do too much with it, and I'm kind of conflicted with it because I like the fact that this is a survival movie where the princess is thrown into a dragon's lair and has to figure out how to A, get out, and B, survive. So I like that concept. I really did, and I really thought that this movie did some things well with that. It didn't do everything well. There is one part that it didn't really work for me because it was like, why does that exist? It's for the sake of the plot, and it's like to keep the story moving along so you don't sit too long. And I thought that was kind of silly because essentially there's this spot in the cave that she's hiding from the dragon and has some information for her, essentially a map of the entire cave. And I'm just like, how did that get there? If a princess, like, this is a tradition that's been going on for ages and ages and ages and ages, so there's obviously been princesses that have been dropped in this lair and have had to do exactly what she's doing. But it doesn't make sense why there's a map, because this cave that they're in, it's in the middle of like the dragon lair of the mountain, and it's like it's hand drawn to it's really well hand drawn, mind you. It doesn't look like it should have. It was like put a rock to wall and actually drew it out. Unless it's besides the point. I don't know why the map is there. It kind of takes away from the actual having to survive. Like it makes it cheap. It cheapens the survival aspect of it cheapens the thrill of her actually getting out of this alive, and you just know she's gonna get out of it because she has a map and she just has to remember these couple of places, and then there you go. But I'm like, who had time? What princess had time to run out, find these things, and make these paths and make the connection that this goes to there and I got to go back this way to go here, and then go back and draw it on there? Because you have a dragon chasing after you. That doesn't make sense why you're going back to where you were just to draw a map. Granted, I know why the map should exist because a bunch of princesses have been there, but like what too much. It takes away from the actual thrill of the story. It takes away from it because you're just like, oh, so she now knows how to get out. Like she knows how to like it has a way out, and I'm just like, are you kidding me? that takes away from everything about that. This entire story has gotten taken away because there's a map that tells her exactly where she needs to go. I thought the acting was fine. There's also been some complaints about the CGI, which I'm just like, look, it's Netflix. It's Netflix. It's not an excuse, but you should know the type of attention it's supposed to get when it comes to CGI. Even in some of their more funded projects, the CGI is not always great, and that's not a knock on the visual effects artists or anything. It's just budget. If your movie has the budget for it, which Netflix is a very iffy thing when it comes to budgets. Like, we don't know the types of budget these movies get. Like, they don't release that information. We don't even know how much these movies will make money wise when it comes to releasing it and then being on streaming for a week or two or even a month or two. Or, I mean, it's going to be on there for a while, but like there's no value for that. So we're not going to know all this information like we do with normal movies that come out in theaters. So I don't put a lot of stress on the fact. I don't put a lot of stress on the fact that it has some noticeable green screen and the CGI isn't always perfect. You know, like I'm not going to trip about that. I did like the dragon though. The dragon was pretty dope, but that's also because I love dragons. I grew up with like watching dragons and stuff like that. So it's always cool to see a different take, a different interpretation, a different look, and a different like feel, and just that different take of what a dragon is. This one talks, and the actress that plays her is fantastic. I know her name, but I can't pronounce it, and I'm not gonna butcher it here. If you need a reminder of who she is or where you've heard that voice from, if you like video games, she plays a character in Assassin's Creed Mirage. She also was in The Punisher. She had a major role in the show The Expanse, which I haven't watched, and I'm gonna start watching it now because she's in it. Because I didn't know that she was in it, and I love her as an actress. Her voice is so iconic, and it worked so well with the dragon. I was like, damn, that's as soon as I heard it, I was like, wait, no way. Is it? It is. Oh, I love it. Oh my gosh. And that made me like that really what got me back into the movie because I was kind of checking out by that point. But then we got to that, and then when the dragon started talking, I was like, oh, I know that voice. Okay, I can finish this movie in peace now, knowing I'm soothed by that voice. It's great. I thought that was great casting. I wish I could tell you her name, but you're gonna have to just trust me. That voice is iconic. As soon as you hear it, you'll know it. She's been in so many things. But I thought it was perfect casting. The dragon design was pretty cool. It was very lion-esque, where the spikes in fur. It didn't have. I'm not sure if it was fur. I think it was just kind of frilly with like, not spikes per se. Well, there were some spikes there, but it looked like a mane, like a lion's mane, and I thought that was really cool around the head. And it had some gill like scales. So when you see the brief fire, it actually shows the fire coming, like the light of the flame coming out. The design of the fire was iffy because it kind of came out like lava, where it was spewing out, but it came out like fire, but it flowed like lava, which was weird. But hey, again, it's a different take on dragons, so I'm not gonna trip about it. It's just something that I noticed. Um, there's also something that bugged me. Angela Bassett was in this movie, and I was confused. And not because she's in it, but kind of because she's in it. And I was like, you are Oscar-winning actress in the Netflix movie, which isn't anything to say because there've been other Oscar-nominated and Oscar-winning actors and actresses in Netflix stuff. They're just getting a paycheck, and that's what makes it. This is one of those movies where I was like, okay, I don't expect a lot of high grossing names in this movie. But then you get her, and I'm like, and she's kind of just there, and I feel like it's a waste of Angela Bassett, and I was just disappointed. Like, there's this whole like conspiracy with the other like Angela Bassett plays Millie Bobby Brown's princess stepmom. She's her stepmom, and she doesn't know about the conspiracy against she's supposed to be marrying into this family, which is why she ends up being in the dragon lair. And Angela Bassett's stepmom kind of starts to like not figure it out, but see something's wrong, and she's trying to like help prevent it from happening. But that's about all she does up until near the end, like the 2/3 way through the movie, where we start the next the kind of climax of the film, where she still kind of does nothing, and it's like, why did you have her in this movie? You're just gonna waste her as an actress. Like, oh my god, that's such a dick move, Netflix. Like, I don't like y'all for that. Like, if you're gonna use her, at least make her like the evil queen who is a part of the conspiracy of getting, throwing all these princesses from other kingdoms into this dragon lair to appease the dragon. Which the lore behind that is kind of interesting. I did like that there was not just a twist to it, but there was an actual reason behind the dragon's motivations for doing what she's doing. Um, kind of. It I think it would have been the ending is where I start, and then this, once we get to the end of the movie, that's where I kind of dropped off because it just stopped making sense. Um, there wasn't a lot of action per se. There was just a good action sequence near the end that I thought would have ended differently, but it just kind of they did the best they could to make it as happy of an ending as possible. Everybody gets the bad people get their just desserts and then some, and then like Millie Bobby Brown's princess goes off back home and does all these things, and even the dragon gets a part of the happy ending, which I thought was weird because this dragon's motivation is that she hates humans for doing something terrible that affected her. She only, and then she at the end, Millie Bobby Brown almost kills her, and I say almost because this is important. We didn't want to kill the dragon because the dragon has to get its revenge properly, because there's a whole thing about the dragon's been lied to, thinking that the princesses were actual princesses of the bloodline that she's trying to kill off, which is not the case. They've been. I'm going into spoilers, so I'm just gonna have to spoil how this works. The kingdom that Millie Bobby's princess marries into, their ancestors killed these baby dragons, and the dragon finds out, obviously, and almost kills the king, but doesn't kill the king at the time because she wants them to start bringing his princesses to the dragon so she can kill them. That's the entire like motivation, which I thought was cool. It's very interesting that they kind of did this because it's not like the dragon like actively went out to the kingdom and found out that he did that. It was more like she was there when it happened, and they just kind of made this deal, which didn't make sense. It kind of makes sense because she would have burned down their kingdom and all this other stuff, and it's like, okay, but like, whatever. So the way they do it though is they have, at least in this case, because the other cases I cannot tell you how it worked because I guess they just kept having boys and they couldn't sacrifice any daughters, so they had to get princesses to marry into their family. They do the blood thing where they cut their hands, and they put their hands together so that the prince's blood is now her blood, and she's now officially part of their family. And the dragon smells that blood as that, or else it wouldn't kill these princesses. It's pretty messed up, and I wish they kind of went into that a little bit more with that conspiracy, but they couldn't really, which is fine. Anyway, by the end of the movie, Billy Bobby's princess is supposed to convince the dragon that she's not actually a part of their family. Yes, they got married. Yes, she smells their blood because they faked it in a way, but she's not actually their blood. And she's trying to convince the dragon that she's been killing innocent princesses the entire time, or most of the time. We got to assume most of the time. And the dragon's not convinced. By the end, she's not convinced that this is happening, and she almost dies for it. She almost dies for it, and then there's a Deus ex machina in this movie called this little cave worm that heals wounds. So she just puts the worms on her and it heals. Anyway, not important. It's a Deus ex machina. Honestly, it's just like, oh yeah, we got to keep this going. We got to make her. We got to get this thing going. Anyway, so by the end, the dragon's like believes her now and goes and burns down the castle and all the people in essentially all the people in it, including the family that that was tricking her for years. And then the dragon is actually seen at the very end, flying with the princess, Millie Bobby's princess, off into the sunset. And I was like, wait, logically that doesn't make sense because this dragon hated humans, and then she hated that family, but realized the family was tricking her. But we didn't see them actually become friends at the end with each other. So, like, why is the dragon there? That was my only thing. I was like, why was the dragon there at the end? Like, yeah, let it burn down the castle, let it get its revenge, and then let it go do what it wants to do, and let it live in peace. You know what I mean? Like, let it live in its cave in peace and call it a life. I don't know why the dragon was there at the very end. It didn't make any sense. They didn't become friends. At least we didn't see them become friends. So it just didn't make sense why the dragon was there. And they could have just been there just to been there. They didn't really interact or anything. But I was also just kind of like, there's no reason for her to be there. But whatever. Maybe they're trying to set up a sequel. It's not doing bad on Netflix though. I think it's worth a watch, in my opinion. If I were to rank these movies from most entertaining to least entertaining, I would go Damsel. I'm saying a lot I had a lot more to say about that, and I had a lot better engagement with that one for several different reasons. But still, I put it. Then Imaginary, which I think is still a solid movie, even though people are kind of giving it crap. I don't know why, but honestly, go check it out for yourself and make your own opinion. And then Kung Fu Panda. Again, that's a kids movie, so I can't really give it much. But I'm also not going to use that as an excuse for the lack of trying with it, especially when it has past examples to go off of and seems to not understand why people love those movies. It felt like a cash grab, so I got to put that as least entertaining for me. I can't really give a salty ratings because this is the first time I'm doing 3 movies all at once because this was kind of a busy weekend. So I was like, okay, I don't think I can just do one for each of these films. I don't have a lot to say about all of them, so let's just throw them all together. So an overall salty critics rating is just not going to happen. So I just gave you the best to worst in my entertainment value. And I'll let you do with that information what you will. If you enjoyed Kung Fu Panda 4, by all means. Like I said, I saw some adults in there enjoying having a good time. I just personally didn't have it. This is all my opinion. If you don't like Damsel, then that's fine too. I mean, whatever. But this is all just my opinion. This is all my perspectives and what I took from the movies and the things that I enjoyed about the movie. Oh, one more thing about Imaginary. They did a practical thing. Blumhouse does really well with practical. I mean, they do some CG, obviously, but like for the most part, the practicality of the interaction between the imaginary friend and the world that it lives in and all these things, it was really fleshed out. Okay, it wasn't fleshed out's not the term I would use. It was really alive. It felt like they were actually there because they built an actual set. It looked like they built an actual set with some, green, like some digital stuff in the background, of course, but like there was like an actual practical set. There was a practical monster because there is a monster in this. It's an actual like imaginary friend that turns into this beast of a bear, and it's really cool looking. I'm glad we didn't get to see too much of it in the trailers because I think that would have taken us out of the movie. And I'm glad we didn't see too much of it in the movie up until the end where it actually mattered, where we needed to see that creature in the flesh. And like, yeah, it was so cool. You gotta love the practicality of things. I mean, like the set design and practicality was always was Bloomhouse's like bread and butter. Like they know how to use practicality in sets in like costumes and animatronics and things like that really really well. Um, and again, it's not everybody's cup of tea. If you don't like it, you don't like it. If you like it, like I did, you like it, I did. Cool. Then we can agree on something. But that's my triple rating. My salty triple rating. Salty triple rating. Triple salty rating. Triple salty rating. I'm gonna call it a triple salty rating. Um, I hope you enjoyed this podcast. Please stay tuned for the next one. There's a lot of movies coming out in March, and I'm gonna try to keep up with as many of them as possible. I did get to see Dune 2. I'll briefly touch on it right now. I cannot find myself to talk about it at all. I was sitting in my room after watching it last weekend or 2 weekends ago, and I just couldn't figure out how to talk about it. I'd never read the books. I did enjoy the first one, but I also enjoyed it at home. So I had subtitles and I could pause it and actually take my time with that movie. This one was the first one. This Dune 2, I saw it in theaters, so it was a lot to try and take in all at once. And it was a lot to try and take in all at once. And it took me about the entire week to finally like really understand the film and made sure that I understood the film. I think if you love the books, you're gonna love this movie. I think if you love sci-fi fantasy and you like world building, you'll love this movie. It does take its time though, and you have to be able to sit there and like understand everything that's happening all at once. Um, it maybe takes a couple viewings to actually really fully understand it. But hey, I think it might be worth a second viewing. I personally didn't go see it a second time because I just didn't really have the time to go see it again. And I also just wasn't really sure if I was just like, oh, I'm into it because I actually like it or because everybody else likes it. Like I didn't understand, and then after a while I finally kind of started to understand everything. It made sense. Um and I think it's worth a second viewing. I think I could go watch it again for sure. Like do like a Tuesday night $5 movie kind of deal. That'd be kind of cool. But I don't pay for my movies anymore. I'm just kidding. I do pay for my movies. Um But yeah, let's do in a fourth one for you for free. How about that? Actually, it's not for free. Actually, it is for free because I don't get paid to do this. I do this for fun. I actually really love talking about movies. That being said, I actually would love to have people on my podcast with me. I would love to have actual conversations about movies and actually ask questions, do really good deep dives into theories and like thoughts and opinions and like do a nice little back and forth with like, oh, I like this, oh, I like that, oh, I didn't like this, I kind of like that though. Just having the interaction of watching a movie with somebody. It's really really cool. So if you're interested in that, this is me reaching out to anybody that's interested in jumping on the podcast with me. You don't have to be a regular. You could be just someone that pops on for an episode. Say, hey, I want to watch this movie. Is that something you would want to talk about? I'm down to watch whatever. If you find it on Netflix, you find it on Prime, you find it on Hulu. It's a movie that's coming out in theaters. Let's go. I'm down. I love watching movies. I love talking about films, and I would love to have more engagement with people and love having these conversations with actual people. And that being said, thank you for joining me on this episode of Salty Critics, and I'll see you in the next one.